All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today on my journey to, recreate my 1973 BMW 2002. Now, for those of you who know this car, it didn't originally start as the fuel-injected model. So it's just a step below what they call the TII, although the gentleman who I bought the car from added fuel injection and a 5-speed transmission. Originally, it came with a 4-speed. I've got lots of extra parts if anybody's interested or doing the same car. This is it in my really small shop. I'll do another video one day to talk about the shop and the tools that I've had to buy to do this. Some I have had already, but some are new. And now you can just kind of get a look at the car that I've got it up on a set of quick jacks. I'm not going to bore everybody with another quick jack video. There's lots out there, but I can say that they're great. They are very helpful in a job like this. Okay, you didn't get a chance to see the interior before, but you can see it's in really good shape. There's some damage on the dash, but we can take care of that. Lots of parts available for this car, so keep that in mind. But all in all, it does start, it does run. What we're going to do today is really start to take the suspension apart. So for those of you, when you first get into a car like this, you kind of need to decide how it is or what it ultimately you're going to use it for. Do you want to track the car? Do you want to put it on the road? What is it? So now let's get into the meat of it a little, just to go over some of the parts. You have the brake caliper here. They are disc brakes in the front, drum in the back. I'll decide whether I'm going to change that later. If I get back inside here a little, I apologize, it's a little dark. I'll see what I can do about that. But you can see some of the various parts. Steering control, lower control arm. Okay, then you have the brake itself, and then you have your coilover suspension. So I don't know if this is original or what's been updated. It looks like a new shock inside, but I won't really know till I get it apart. Some steps that you need to make sure that you do. All right, so the first thing that you're going to want to do in here is really take off the brake lines. I'm going to remove the whole unit from here. So the brake lines are back in here. They're a little rusty. Sometimes these are pretty new. You're going to need 2 wrenches to get them off, though. You're going to need a nice pair of pliers and a good wrench. Make sure that you spray a little WD-40 or something so you can get the nuts off pretty easy. Okay. I have drained them already when I took the first one off, but you'll want to make sure that you have a way to drain that brake fluid when you're done. All right. So that's first to go. Get yourself a little bucket to catch any errant brake fluid. Like I said, I did drain it already, but you never know. And brake fluid's pretty flammable, so you're going to really want to be careful with it and store it somewhere so it doesn't burn your house down or your shop down or wherever you might be doing the work. Okay, just to repeat that, in case the video didn't come out so well before. You can see there's the brake line that was attached right here. These are the metal tube. These will come all off with the caliper once you take that off. So you don't have to worry. They'll be completely disconnected from the car once they come off. But again, there was some dripping. Catch basins there ready to go. There's one more to take off, and then I can move to taking apart the control arm. Let me apologize if I'm getting any of the parts wrong. As I sort of stated in the opening, I'm really new to this and I'm teaching myself as I go. I'm sure anybody who sees this video, if you've done this before or make some comments to help people out, that would be great. But for now, let's just get these brake lines off so I can move to the next phase, which is really taking the lower control arm off.
Okay, so I'm underneath the car now, as you might have been able to guess. So I'm going to try and point out a few parts to you here that you need to think about, and then I'm going to go ahead and take them off. Just so you know what needs to come off before this whole piece will come out, you can see right up into the suspension, right up into the coilover, and then there's our brake again, our brake caliper, and now what we have here is the lower control arm. So the lower control arm needs to come off, as well as a few of these ball joints. You're going to need to get a ball joint removal tool. Is very helpful. There are other ways to do it with C-clamps and such, but you need, that's probably for people who know a little bit more than I do. There are a number of cotter pins that you can see. If you don't know what a cotter pin is, it's a metal pin that slides in and then spreads apart. Those all need to come out. These nuts are going to need to come off. They're on pretty darn good, so put yourself some WD-40 or some liquid wrench on there in order to be able to take them off a little bit easier. But then as we come around, you can see that this bolt is going to have to come off here for the control arm. And you can see that connects all the way up to the front of the car. These 3 bolts need to come out, but that's something that you can do after you get the whole assembly apart. Once I pull this bolt, the control arm will pull away. Now, these control arms are original to the car. You can see some of them are pretty beat up. This is if you hit something, run over a parking cement parking block or a big stone, you can get these damaged. There are other ones you can buy. Son of Cobra's got a really cool setup for this. It's more of a performance base, but you can buy the original OEM control arms. You can also get, aftermarket ones that are a little beefier, which, can take a little bit more of a pounding. I'm not entirely sure if they help with the driving experience, but they'll definitely won't get bent and beat up as much.
You're going to want to get some of your liquid wrench out. Apologies for the shadow here. Get it on that nut just to help us loosen it up. I do just want to make mention that one of the things that you'll hear about is this spring can be punishing if you happen to try and take it apart without first clamping it down. I purchased a device from Princess Auto that allow you to put tension to that spring. You actually don't need to do it at this point. If you're going to disassemble it, you definitely will, but right now you don't need to do that. This is the rod that connects back up to the steering as well. I'll try and show you a little bit more how that connects underneath. I haven't gone too far with that yet. I'm really only at this stage where I'm disassembling, each of the shock towers here. Bolt that we need to make sure we get some liquid wrench on, and you can see the pin there. The liquid wrench will help clean it up in case there's any gunk on there built up. I recommend wearing rubber gloves. I'm not the best at it. I try when I can, but keep your hands clean, keeps your sink clean. Your wife won't, give you too much hell for doing it. I did just want to mention the bushings as well. You'll see bushings all throughout. Anywhere that metal connects together has a bushing in order to make it a little more comfortable and allows for some room as the suspension moves around in the joint. Some in the car have been replaced for sure. You want to be careful or not be careful. It's really kind of a choice to whether you go to polyurethane bushings or rubber bushings. Rubber's a little bit softer of a ride. The polyurethane is a little more stiff when you're driving around, but They also last a lot longer as well, and sometimes in certain aspects can be replaced a little bit easier because they're two parts. But they're pretty easy to get your hands on for this car. You can buy entire bushing kits. They come for all of them, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about bushings as we kind of go through all of this. Okay, just to take off that bolt, it's cleaned up a little. I pulled the pin out, the cotter pin. It's a 17 millimeter bolt. I've got a 1/2 inch ratchet on it, and I'm just gonna take it off and put it in the pan to be cleaned up later. I'm doing my best to try and catalog them as I go. There's lots of parts that you can forget. So you'll just see that comes off pretty easy. Okay, so that's one of the ball joints I was talking about that you need. There's a tool that you use. It's specific to ball joints. You're going to need a number of kits, a couple of kits anyways, to remove bushings and so forth. But this one is a ball joint. You can see the little hole for the cotter pin. So remember that you're going to have to replace that later. It just helps keep everything secure. Here's the tool that I referred to a little earlier. There's a number of these online available on Amazon. This one happened to be on sale. What you want to look for are ones that have a lot of different variants, as the way this gets connected can be different on various cars. And all you want to do is get it fitted so it's underneath this metal part, so that this screw can push on the top. Now what I can do is I just take that out and it pops out just like that. That's okay to be suspended there for now. I don't think that there's any harm. That's the first piece that we've got to take off before we can start to disconnect the entire shock from the car. Okay, so we're at the lower control arm, which is one of the pieces that needs to come off before we can remove everything. There's a cotter pin here. I mentioned those a little earlier. That needs to come out. So I'm just gonna bend those back. These aren't really usable once you're done, so you're gonna have to replace them. Sometimes they can be a little odd to get out. You can really pull on them, but they will come out. They're easy enough to break them off if they're not going to give you a hassle. But you can see that one came out really easy. Now what I need to do is I need to remove both this bolt and this larger bolt up here, and then these bolts and this are going to have to come out, and then at that point the control arm can be pulled away from the car. First bolt I'm going to take out is right here. I'm not entirely sure what this part's called just yet. It's a 13 millimeter socket. Again, don't forget to get yourself some metric tools. I'm using a 1/2 inch ratchet. You can use some of these smaller ones, you can use 3/8 for, but you're really gonna want both. You're gonna have smaller spots where your 1/2 inch ratchet is just gonna be too big to get to. Just a note about sockets as well. There's something, for those of you who don't know, there's something called a 12 point and a 6 point. 12 point gives you more options for fitting on the nuts themselves or the bolts, but they're ultimately not as strong a connection as your 6 point is. Okay, so now I'm gonna take off this bolt. It really doesn't matter which order you take them off in. Ultimately, once this drops, you're able to get all these connection points to the frame of the car. It'll come off pretty easy. But
you do want to try and make it so you're not bending and sort of twisting things. Although some of these parts are pretty hard. It would be really difficult for you to actually bend them, but it does make it a pain in the ass to take the entire control arm off. So we're going to take this bolt off first. Then I'm going to go up here and take this larger bolt off. And then what that's going to allow us to do is slide the whole lower control arm off. And then I can pull this connection point out. Once that's done, these bolts will be next. But let's get to this one. So it is a 22 millimeter socket, again, a 1/2 inch drive. So we're just going to put that on. This one, because it's part of this connector here, we don't need to put anything on it to hold it. And you can see I broke it apart earlier, although I did use some liquid wrench, again, to loosen it up and clean it. So it's going to just come right off. Now, these bolts I've never really seen anything like them before, but they're really a lot of work, like right until the very end. I'm really messy with my tools. I don't pick them up as I go, which is a really dumb idea, but c'est la vie. Well, maybe one day I'll get better at it, but for the moment, I'll just pick them up as I go. I'm not gonna use my socket on this. I've got a 24 millimeter wrench here, gear wrench. Good stuff. I just got it off Amazon. Oh, unfortunately, this one I've got to take a pin out. No, not quite. Remember, these particular bolts can be really dirty. So you're going to need to make sure it's clean, just because if the car's been driven. These are 13 millimeter, which means I'm going to need my 13 millimeter wrench for the top. And the ratchet, you can... Okay, I'm gonna have to apologize. I just got myself a GoPro, and I'm still learning how to use it. I have to wear it on my head so you can see. You can see that entire shock is out now, including the brake assembly, everything else. Here's the control arm. I do have one that's a little cleaner over on the workbench. I'll try and show you that in a little more detail later. It's not a real complicated part. What I really wanted you to see was right here. So you can see on both sides, this is where the shock connects to the car. It's really 3 bolts that hold it in place. It is heavy. You couldn't hold it with one arm for very long. So what you want to do is, I use the tires from the car, 2 stacked, is sort of high enough that it doesn't fall too far and you don't slam it into the concrete. It really is 3 bolts to take out, and that's it. Once you pull those bolts, the whole thing will just drop right down and you can set it aside. I will kind of take you over here. There's the one we just took out. You can see the brake's still attached. This is the one that I took out from the passenger side. It's a little cleaner. Just as a note, when you start to take this apart, the springs you'll have to compress. You'll want to hang on to these strut housings in case you want to put in a more performance-oriented part. But I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to taking this apart in the next video. Thanks a lot. See you next time.